When I was 42 years old, I thought I knew exactly how the rest of my life was going to look. I'd be the project manager at the same construction company in Nashville. I'd keep paying the mortgage on my modest house in a decent neighborhood. I'd probably refinance my car a couple times. I'd retire at 65, maybe 67 if the economy dipped. And I'd spend my golden years doing exactly what most Americans do, watching my savings carefully, being careful about eating out, maybe taking one big trip a year if I budgeted right. But here's the thing, none of that happened. And honestly, I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. My name is Deborah Kessler. Most people call me Deb. I'm 61 years old now, and I live in Cebu City, Philippines, specifically in a little neighborhood called Lahug. Walking distance from the IT park. Every single month I live on $2,000, and I'm not scraping by, pinching pennies, or living in some cramped hovel. I'm living like a queen. I've got a gorgeous one-bedroom furnished condo with a view, a wonderful Filipino man who loves me, fantastic food every single day, the most genuinely friendly people I've ever encountered. And I'm saving nearly $1,000 every month. If you'd told my 30-year-old self this would be possible, I wouldn't have believed you. Let me back up and tell you how a woman from Nashville, Tennessee ended up here. I grew up in a pretty typical American household, working-class parents, church on Sundays, public school, the whole thing. I got decent grades, went to community college. And by my mid-20s, I'd landed a solid job as a project manager for a mid-sized construction company. And I mean solid. The kind of job where you wear a polo shirt with the company logo. You've got a corner of an office space, and you've got responsibility. For 35 years, I did that job. 35 years, I managed crews, stayed on budget, made sure projects got done on time. I was good at it, reliable, the kind of person you could count on. I got married in my 20s. We had a couple of great kids, a son and a daughter, bought a house, built a life, all the American dream stuff. But like a lot of marriages, mine didn't work out. Curtis and I split when I was about 53. That's a hard age to go through a divorce, let me tell you. By then the kids were grown, doing their own thing, living their own lives. Curtis and I, we handled it as maturely as two people can when something that important falls apart, but it's never not painful. After the divorce, I'd look around my house in Nashville and think, what the hell am I doing here? I had this mortgage, this maintenance, this whole life I'd built that suddenly felt like it was just for nothing. For nobody. My kids had their own lives. Curtis was rebuilding his. And I was sitting there in Middle Tennessee, working my construction job, coming home to an empty house, watching TV, trying to figure out what the point of all this was. That's when I started thinking about the future. I had a pension from the construction company, a small one, but it's been there, and I'd been paying into Social Security for 35 years. I ran the numbers with a financial advisor, and when I added those two things together, I was looking at somewhere around $2,000 a month in retirement income. In Nashville, $2,000 a month sounds tight, really tight. I mean, you can do it, but you're not going anywhere. You're not having fun, you're managing. And the idea of spending the next 20, maybe 30 years just managing, just existing on a tight budget in a place that suddenly felt too big and too empty, man, that scared me more than anything. So I started researching, what if I didn't have to retire in America? What if I took that $2,000 somewhere else? I looked at Mexico first. I had a friend in San Miguel de Allende who kept telling me it was paradise. Cheap, beautiful, tons of American expats, good food and wine culture. I looked into it seriously, was learning some Spanish, watching videos, thinking about what a life there might look like. But here's the honest truth. I couldn't get comfortable with Spanish. I'd spent my whole life speaking English. I was too old to feel confident I could get fluent enough to really connect with people on a deeper level. And the thought of being in a country where I couldn't communicate without a phrase book, that made me anxious. Looking back, that was maybe a limiting belief, but it was real to me at the time. Then I was watching YouTube one night. You know how you start with one video and suddenly you're in a completely different corner of the internet. And I came across this channel about expat living in Southeast Asia. The person was talking about the Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, and mentioned Cebu, talked about the cost of living, the beaches, the people, the fact that English is widely spoken, and something just clicked. I watched video after video, fell into this rabbit hole of American retirees, my age, who'd moved to the Philippines and were living incredibly full lives on remarkably small budgets. That's when the real decision-making began. Because moving abroad isn't just an intellectual exercise. It means letting go of your home, your stuff, your routine, your comfort zone. It means saying goodbye to people you love. It means accepting that you might fail and have to come back with your tail between your legs. I spent about 18 months researching before I made any big moves. I read forums, watched videos, looked at real estate listings, calculated budgets, and got honest with myself about what I actually needed to be happy. And you know what? I realized I needed a lot less than I thought. The turning point came when I was walking through my house one afternoon. I looked at all this stuff I'd accumulated over 40 years. Furniture from the 70s and 80s I kept because it was paid for. Kitchen gadgets I'd used maybe twice. My car sitting in the driveway. This is a big one that I was paying insurance and maintenance on, even though I was only driving it locally. Pictures of people and moments on my walls. Memories that were important, but that I didn't need the physical house to remember. And I just thought, I'm 60 years old, I'm single, I have no dependents, and I'm paying to store all of this stuff. Why? So I made the decision. I was going to sell everything. And I mean everything. The house, the car, the furniture, most of my clothes. I kept some personal items, photos, a few pieces genuinely meaningful. But I made a rule. If something wasn't going to fit in a suitcase, I had to think very hard about whether I needed it, because I was going to be a woman who lived out of a suitcase on the other side of the world. And the lighter I traveled, the freer I'd be. Selling the house was surreal. I'd bought it with Curtis nearly 30 years earlier. I'd replaced the roof. I'd redone the kitchen. I'd mowed that lawn in the summer heat for decades. Walking through it for the last time after the closing, I felt something I wasn't expecting. Not sadness exactly, but a kind of bittersweet closure. Like I was closing one chapter of my life and about to open another one I couldn't even imagine yet. I remember standing in the empty kitchen just for a minute, thinking about all the dinners, all the holidays, all the moments, and then I locked the door and drove away. The car sold quickly, decent condition, and used cars are worth something these days. The furniture took a while. I had an estate sale, which was actually kind of interesting, because I got to see people coming through my house, choosing pieces of my life to take with them. Some of it went to family. My son took my father's old workbench that had been in the garage. That meant a lot. My daughter wanted a couple of pieces from the kitchen, and the rest just dispersed into other people's lives. By the time I was done, I had roughly $120,000 in the bank. I'd paid off the mortgage years ago, one of the few smart financial decisions I'd made, so most of that was just savings and the proceeds from selling the house and car. It's not a fortune. It's not going to make me wealthy anywhere. But combined with my pension and Social Security, it was my runway, it was my cushion, it was my permission slip to try something completely different. So there I was in December 2023. 61 years old, with a suitcase, a passport, and the first tourist visa I'd ever gotten in my life. I flew into Mactan Cebu International Airport on a clear morning. And as the plane was descending, I was looking out the window at this tropical island stretched out below me, thinking, well, girl, you actually did it. You sold your whole life and flew to the Philippines. Now what? The first thing that hit me was the heat. Not in a bad way. I mean, it was hot. We're talking Southeast Asia. But it was a good heat. The kind of warmth that felt welcoming after a lifetime of Nashville winters. I walked out of the airport, found a taxi, and I remember the driver asking me in perfect English where I wanted to go. And that right there was the first thing that made me feel like I'd made the right choice. English people spoke English. I wasn't going to be trapped by a language barrier. I'd booked a hotel for my first week, a little place in the Lahug area of Cebu City. I'd researched the neighborhood pretty thoroughly online, but nothing really prepares you for the first time. You're actually there. The streets were busier than I expected. Jeepneys, these wild, colorful vehicles that are basically the public transit system here, were zooming around, honking, motorcycles everywhere, weaving through traffic, tricycles with passengers. It was chaotic in a way that was kind of thrilling. Everything was happening at once, and it felt alive. I spent those first few days just walking around, getting my bearings. I went to SM Seaside, this massive shopping mall right near where I'd be living. If you've never seen one of these Philippine malls, they're not like American malls. They're like small cities. Department store, grocery section, restaurants, coffee shops, a cinema, everything. People go there to hang out, not just to shop. I'd wander through for hours just observing, watching how people moved, how they interacted, what they ate, what they wore, and the food. The first thing someone warned me about was not to eat anywhere that looked sketchy. But honestly, from day one, I started eating at the carinderias, these little local eateries where Filipino people eat. You walk up to a counter. There's usually a menu on the wall or written on a board, and you point at what you want. The food is fresh, hot, cooked in front of you, and it costs almost nothing. I'll never forget the first time I ordered adobo. I didn't know how to pronounce it. I knew what it was from watching YouTube videos, but hearing it and saying it are different things. I was standing at this little counter, pointing at the picture of the chicken dish, trying to say adobo, but saying it like it was Spanish, and absolutely butchering it. The girl behind the counter just started giggling. Not mean, just amused. And then she spoke to me in perfect English and said, "Oh, you mean adobo?" "Sure, 1 plate." She served me this amazing plate of chicken stewed in a dark, salty, slightly sweet sauce with potatoes and onions. Cost 80 pesos, about $1.50. Best comfort food I'd had in years. That became a theme everywhere I went. If I tried to speak a little Filipino, which they call Tagalog, people found it charming and just immediately switched to English. Some knew English well, some knew a little. But they all wanted to talk to me because I was clearly a foreigner. Yes, but more than that, I was someone making an effort. I was interested in their country. I was here voluntarily, not just passing through. And Filipinos, I learned this pretty quickly, are incredibly warm and hospitable people. It's not an act, it's genuine. By day 4 or 5, I started looking at actual condos. My research had pointed me to Lahug as a good neighborhood for an expat. It's close to the IT park, which means it's in a relatively modern area with decent infrastructure, beach access, good restaurants, malls, not as expensive as the tawniest neighborhoods in Cebu, but not shabby either, kind of the middle ground. I found this 1-bedroom condo in a mid-rise building, 15th floor, overlooking a street with some decent restaurants and shops. The building had a gym, a pool, 24-hour security, a parking spot. The condo itself was furnished, bed, couch, table, kitchen equipment, all of it. And the monthly rent